Hi, we're your hosts for The Vision Within. I'm Katrina.
I'm Lori.
Loretta.
And I'm Lisa.
And today we're going to be talking a little bit about the vibration of communication. We also invite you to join us on our YouTube channel.
Yes, the YouTube channel, the Vision Within YouTube channel.
Okay.
And our global
Rising
Tides Global Facebook page. We took a little break, as you might have guessed, since you haven't seen us for a while, so we're a little rusty. But we have decided what we're going to talk about, as we always do, about 3 minutes before we go on camera. And we're real excited about this.
We are excited about this one.
Communication.
We were talking all together about the vibration of communication, how communication changes and shifts with each generation, and also kind of how it lends itself to our society. And we were talking about a bunch of different things, but one of the things I remember really vividly, I noted it and journaled it because it was so powerful for me, was that I love Brene Brown. I think she's wonderful. Mm-hmm. She has great social work, research, and she talks a lot about vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And with vulnerability, she said it is the cornerstone of wholehearted living, and it really is the biggest part of leading a happy life. And one of the things she says that can be really challenging, she knows when a society is about ready to make a really giant shift, when they start using language that separates a particular group of people, and the words that they start using are they and them, and it becomes third person, and it's this language of separation, and it almost creates a hierarchy where the us are above the them or the they. And that's when she said she notices that the language moves first, and then other things kind of snowball out of that. And I thought that was really fascinating. And I thought, it's really interesting because it was right around the same time that I read that you were talking about Eckhart Tolle, and that you had done some research online with Eckhart Tolle and taken some of his classes about being present. And I thought, I have a big opportunity to be really present to the words that I use and the language that I use, to be able to be more inclusive and loving. And I thought, I've really got to pay attention to that. So what do you guys think? What do you think, Loretta?
Pardon me. It's interesting that you were mentioning that too, with the whole different language and how we start labeling, because I'm actually reading or listening to the audiobook of Brene Brown, Into the Wilderness.
Braving the Wilderness.
Thank you. And she was talking about how people are starting to separate themselves into factions, kind of like that movie Divergent.
Yes.
How we're starting to do, more of that. And and I was thinking about this early this morning also too, and I was thinking about, what's going on, currently with the, with the labeling of the different groups of people, and I'm just concerned on how we can get back to one humanity, we're all the same.
Do you mean labeling of generations or labeling in terms of ethnicity?
Both, really.
Okay.
But I think that it's the ethnicity is what I was, trying to use it as for an example.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
I think that if we continue down this path, then we're going to be more and more separated from our own sense of humanity, I think.
That's really interesting that you asked the question about, what it is. I hear it too, in my place of work. I hear it talking about generations. I hear it talking about men and women. And I'm like, wow, isn't that just so interesting that we're in this time of the feminine rise of power. And I don't mean power in a bad way, but I mean it'll be coming back into balance. And so it's this point in time where we are invited to be more compassionate and more loving, and I'm still really aware of all of this language. And I'm like, wow. So that's why I think that's interesting that it's a lot, and how do we change that? What's your experience been?
Well, it's interesting too, because I was just between last night and on the way here, I was hearing different things about how we communicate with one another. And even in the radio coming over, I heard an interesting thing, and I cannot think of the actress right now. was the redhead who was married to Tom Cruise.
Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman. Yeah. And she said that in the 12 years she's been married to Keith Urban, she has never sent him a text.
Oh,
because
wow.
she said things can get lost in translation. And so she calls. And I thought of all of the times where I've had issues pop up because of miscommunication, and it's always been around text. And then some other things that I've noticed is speaking to humanity. I was just scrolling through Facebook last night, and someone said, posted that they'd gotten a weird message from someone that reached out to them, and they signed it, I am human.
Oh.
And, you know, right. Yeah. But that's kind of one of those interesting things, too, where they said there's a movement trying to create a label calling us human. And it's,
interesting.
Yeah. And I was like,
There are some. What's coming up for me is there are a couple of different angles for that. One of them is with the rise of AI and computers. There's that part of it. But for me, that feels compassionate. It feels like, you know what? Remember that you're dealing with another person, even though it feels different because it's written or it's in email or it's in text.
Right.
Remember that you're connecting with another person, please.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, one thing that I thought, too, speaking to the vibration of communication, because usually when I'm driving down the road is when I'm really streaming all this great ideas for book chapters and what have you. And so I have to hit voice memo, and I can really tell because it makes the little zigzag lines, you know. And so it's like I can really tell just by looking at it and the vibration patterns what is really going to be impactful, because if it's just like this, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, that's going to be one pattern, and it's very much like hypnosis where it's in, out, you know, you're bringing focus in, then you're bringing it out, then you bring it in, you're bringing it out. It's like breathing. Well, it's the same thing when we're looking at vibration of our words. You know, and then you can take that little segment and you can weave that into a book. And so, you know, I think we do this all naturally, you know, but I just thought that was cool that I was watching the vibration.
Seeing the vibration. Yeah. It's funny you say that, because when I get like little brief messages, like when we text each other, but it's from a recording, I notice that too. When it comes in, I notice the vibration of it. And it's kind of fascinating. I can always tell how excited you are about something, because if it's like, it goes like a big peak. It's like,
Right.
That's great.
So what are your thoughts on the vibration of communication, Lisa?
I've been noticing the power of words and the vibration of words, frequency of words for a long time. In fact, I've gone so extreme that I won't even say hello anymore, because it's got the word hell in it. So, I mean, I'm serious. I mean, I'm really cognizant and observant of not only the connotation behind the word, but maybe the origin, maybe the subliminal messages. There's so much in the English language, so much in every language. And I feel that the human condition that we've been programmed in our recurring patterns is to react in basically words and action. You know, that's the reaction stage, words and action. You know, the feelings and thoughts is within us, and then externally we either are vocal or we do something in an action sense to attack or react. So I feel that the words can be passive-aggressive as well, very passive-aggressive. We might fake the tone, yet the words we choose is getting the message across.
Yes.
And then we're like, oh, I don't know why you reacted to that. You know, well, the person's having trouble saying why you reacted to that, or he or she, but it's because I pinged back, let's say, something very passive-aggressive in the words I chose. And then, of course, the frequency I chose that went along with the feelings and the thoughts and the words were definitely not in alignment with the highest and best good of the co-creation. So along with everything else in this reality, in this third dimensional polarized reality, I've really been cognizant and observant of the meaning of words. And in fact, I've gone down several rabbit holes. There are people out there that have studied this ad infinitum and gone back to Sumerian tablets even and studied what all these biblical words mean, what all the ancient words mean. And the English language was the last language to be brought into this realm. So it probably is a melting pot of a lot of different, as we know, it's a melting pot of a lot of different languages, Latin, French, German, English. I mean, it's obviously the base. But so what I'm saying is, if we want to stop the volcano erupting, which I feel like is at the surface, so the feelings and thoughts is before the volcano erupts, and if we can't shift our frequency before that, then it's best not to say or do. But yet, unfortunately, the human condition likes to react and ping back an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It's even in the Bible. Ping back what we just got, or maybe ping back more. Now, the Bible says don't ping back more than you got. But that's perpetual war, perpetual conflict. Just playing the ping pong game if you keep pinging back an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
And you keep upping the ante. And all the while,
right.
You're minimizing each other and creating more separation.
Right.
That's the part that's tough.
Yeah, and even the word vulnerability. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I invite all the viewers to disagree with me. But I have gone down the rabbit hole so much that I realize vulnerability has a huge connotation around it. It's a bridge to getting to the present moment. But vulnerability still, in my opinion, in my feelings, my world, invites me, if I'm vulnerable, to play the codependency role of being a victim, or one of the other two, perpetrator or rescuer. So, or I'm viewing someone else as the victim, whatever. So I feel we go beyond vulnerability. That's the key, is to go beyond vulnerability, get out of the codependency of this realm, and co-create with the energetic of amplifying each other's perfection. Like this, two spheres go opposite directions, and then they go faster and faster and faster and faster, like a machine, rather than encroaching on the two spheres and stealing each other's energy in a ping pong game, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So to me, vulnerability steals each other's energy. And like a mother's milk, the mother's milk is best for her child, and our energy is best for us, and your energy is best for you. And the human condition is about stealing each other's energy. So I leave that with all of you to ponder here for a few minutes. But that's where I am right now.
I think that's really interesting. It's a fascinating perspective. I can understand your perspective. For me, vulnerability is incredibly empowering because it means that I am standing in so surely and certainly in my truth that I am being 100% of who I am, being completely authentic, no matter where I am and what I do. I'm 100% myself. And that which is outside of me, it doesn't matter because I'm still going to be my truth. There's vulnerability in that. Now that is true for me in my experience. So I see it as being something that enriches my energy.
Yeah, vulnerability to me is, like you said, standing tall in your strength and in your courage and in your confidence.
In your truth.
But and still being soft enough to have the compassion and the empathy, and also to have trust. Because if I'm going to be vulnerable with you, it means that I trust you. And the same with that. I think that vulnerability is the basis of trust. If you've got two people and you're trying to have a relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship, if you're not willing to be vulnerable, right, then you really can't have the relationship. I mean, the relationship isn't based on anything real from my perspective.
I'm just saying I don't agree with the word vulnerability.
Gotcha.
Okay.
She's like, pick me.
But I also am going in that same rabbit hole. So we're in the same rabbit hole. And it's funny because when I was young, I used to collect books. I've always been a bibliophile, always. And I used to dissect words all the time. And I would look at them like somehow I was just learning something if I looked at the way they were phonetically shaped. And, I thought of them as trains, and then it went to the conjunction, junction, what's your function, and all that.
That's cute.
So I have been looking at a lot of Greek and Latin derivatives and thing of words, and vulnerability was one I was pulling apart the other day. And so it is interesting. I think that at the core of it, what we're saying is authenticity.
Right. As I was saying, truth and authenticity.
It's because when we are true to exactly who we are, we're just being true.
Yeah.
We're being authentic, and there's such strength in that. And yet the term implies we are somehow in a tender state.
Yeah, painful.
Just tender. And yet tender is new. So to me, like a birth of a baby, you can say, oh, the baby is so vulnerable to the conditions around them, but their skin is new and it's tender, and their immune system is new and it's tender. And so tender might be even like a beautiful word.
I like that word, tender. It still has a lot of connotation, and vulnerability begs a huge explanation of what that word means to each individual.
Right.
And therein lies the issue I have with the words, because just like you were saying, Laurie, and I hope you mentioned this on camera here, we were talking about it beforehand, the different age groups have
different ways
interpretations and different ways, but not only different ways, but different interpretations of words.
Right.
Vulnerability has come through the ages, and it's got a lot of charge around it.
It does have a lot
And
of
it's not neutral at all. And it to me, it brings up pain.
Right.
Not even tenderness, but pain. And which is good, because then I can transmute it.
Sure.
And let go of those layers.
Tell us, share with us again what you were talking about, how the different
Age
generations
brackets
communicate. Yes.
Their preference. So I was
Preference.
listening to a radio station, and it was talking about preferences of communication. So the age group prior to baby boomers, and I can't remember what they called that, but they preferred that you write me. So they would say, oh, write me. They wanted a letter. Our group, or the baby boomers group, is call me. The next group, which were the millennials and all that, was email me. And then from 2000 on, because the millennials go, I guess, through 1999, 2000 on, is app me. And they didn't have really a explanation of what app me was. But what I can speak to is that my partner, Mark, was working through something with his daughter, and we are the age of call me. We want to speak it. We want you to call us. We want to talk it through, all of this. And so all of the times that he had said, I'm just sorry about all of the disruption that was caused through divorce and so forth. And it seems like those words went right over her, around her, through her. But when he put it on paper and he wrote it to her, the entire relationship changed, just like that, like a pivot point, as though she had never heard anything else, but saw it.
Yeah.
I think that, and feel that there's an alchemy that happens when you take the time to put pen to paper. It's like, and you express yourself, that there's an alchemy in that, so that when everything that you're feeling, and I think it happens sometimes in cooking too, so that everything you're feeling goes into what you're doing, so that the recipients of that can feel the energy of that.
Yeah.
And I think when you combine it with words and feelings and the alchemy of putting it on paper, you know, there's something very special about when someone writes you a letter anymore, because, you know, we have so many bills that are, you know, we auto pay and we do a lot of things online. And so when I get really excited when I get something in the mail that isn't a bill, frankly, or a notice of some kind.
Right.
So I was, you know, I get really excited when I get a letter. My great aunt, she still writes me, and she's a wonderful storyteller. And when she puts it on paper, I save every one of those letters because she's just a scream. I mean, she's a hoot.
Right.
So the other thing is, in my day job as a business coach, I can always tell when I get an email from someone asking to set up a time, especially if I've already spoken with them, because typically we talk once a month and then interim, you know, and we do a video call. I can always tell what's going on with someone by the words they use and how they email me. And I can tell if what we're going to be talking about is kind of surface, external, business stuff. I need you to help me with a skill, or I need you to help me with a report, or those kinds of things where I'm going to be working from the outside in. Or if it's someone that's like, you know what, this pattern keeps coming up for me. I'm in the same place I was 3 months ago. I got to figure out and get to the root of this. And I know from that, I'm going to be working from the inside out. And so I prepare a little bit differently for those calls than I do for just the basic business calls. But that kind of, all of this with the words and with what I read in Brene Brown, talking with all of you, like I'm just sort of noticing how this is all kind of swirling around. And it's not just for us. I think it's for a lot of people.
And I love how you brought up in the corporate world how you have to communicate differently or want to communicate differently depending on the call or the client. And you're in a global corporation, international. What have you noticed in terms of the translation, or especially between languages? I mean, any miscommunication going on? Or
yeah, but I think it's because so I deal a lot with people not only in the U.S. but with Germany, Switzerland, Spain, Singapore, and it's not only the actual words that you use, but it's also very important if you can see the people's faces, because there's a lot of inflection, and there's a lot of difference, and so, and there's also a difference in how they respond back. So basically, if you are in a meeting with someone more from like Asia Pacific, and you're talking about a topic, and they'll sit there and they'll nod, and you're thinking that they're agreeing with you, but they're not. They're nodding to appreciate what you're saying, but that's not consensus that they agree, right? So you have to be very, very careful. So yes doesn't always mean yes. No doesn't always mean no. And so you have to be really, very careful. And, sometimes, especially in those type of countries, with anything globally, you really have to take the time to build that relationship first. So you have a basis of understanding, and that does include vulnerability and transparency and honesty. But it's much more difficult and demanding, I think, having relationships with people globally, just because of the culture difference, and you really have to be very, very mindful, very, very mindful.
So it's almost as if you have to learn the nonverbals in every country.
Yes, and you have to be careful of your nonverbals as well. You have to, and it's just really, it's just really kind of funny if you're, if I'm in a meeting and I'm in a meeting with mostly, German and Swiss people, and I love my German and Swiss friends. My mother's German, so I'm not trying to say, but you have to really be assertive and step in, because otherwise you won't get a chance to speak, right? Because it's very direct. If you're with, people from Asia Pacific, they're more quiet, and so you have to allow room for them and bring them forward, right? If you're, people from, other countries, they're just either more introverted, more extroverted, more balanced. So when you're dealing with a diverse type of team meeting or diverse meeting, you have to be cognizant of all the different types of cultures that you have, and you have to, as the facilitator, you have to make sure that you're leaving space for everyone to come forward, back and forth and retreat as they can, right? Otherwise, it won't be a balanced meeting. So the communication, the communication method, the actual culture plays huge in that.
Well, we talked about vibration in communication, and nonverbal is 96% possibly
Right.
of our communication.
Right.
So when your Asian coworker is doing this, can you see a vibration with that or any of the other nonverbals? Even if you may not understand what that means, can you kind of pick up a vibration?
Yeah, I mean, that vibration is that, they're, that culture is so respectful toward, things. And so it's, they're listening to what you're saying. Sorry, they're being mindful, they're listening.
So
and then
cool.
you also have, in the meetings especially when you're standing in front, you've got the people that lean back and they're just like this, and that's a totally different
Is
energy.
this universal across
Yeah, it's a
all?
universal, I don't agree with you, or I'm bored, and so
Yeah.
and you have to. It's that too, So, so yeah, it's just, it's incredible.
I think we talked about vibration, and I dated a gentleman from Switzerland some time ago, and he spoke like 4 languages. And I went to a business dinner with him, they were speaking German, and I was like, I remember thinking, well, that's not going well. But when you're angry, you're almost like spitting out your words, and I just saw them, and it was just it felt more harsh to me, just because of the way it sounded. But that was my own limited understanding of kind of what it meant. He's like, no, actually, everything went really well. It was a great meeting. Blah blah blah. So I was like, okay, well, yay for you. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of understanding that we're getting every day about the energy of words, the root of words, and what they mean and how they've evolved, and the emotion we attach to it, and the nonverbals that go along with it, the generational understanding of our communication, how people communicate, and how we balance that within our relationships, no matter how informal or formal they are. And so we have covered a lot of ground around communication, and I think what we can all agree on is that words have energy.
Oh, gosh.
And that before we speak, it's just an invitation to be mindful and to stand in our own truth and allow others to do the same.
And I might just add one other thing. Maybe the true etymology of every word spoken on this earth is the frequency and vibration.
That's juicy. I just got chills. Wonderful. Well, we're your hosts. Thank you for joining us. I'm Katrina.
I'm Lori.
Loretta.
And I'm Lisa. And please visit us on our YouTube channel, The Vision Within. Till next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.